So a little follow-up video to the one I did the other day when I spoke about Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker. I kind of gave my overall impression of that card and I thought it was pretty damn good. I was sold basically, and I didn't think it would get much better, but apparently it has, in my opinion. And so I believe it was yesterday the official Riyadh season poster was revealed for this card, and it's coined the last crescendo. And what a crescendo it seems to be, because it has Artur Beterbiev versus Beterbiev-Bivol, the rematch, which will actually be headlining. I think the other day it was rumoured that Dubois Parker would headline. But rightfully, I think Beterbiev-Bivol is the headline. I say rightfully because these guys truly represent the pinnacle of boxing. They are the best in their weight classes. They are pound for pound best, if that means anything to you, because pound for pound is a little bit abstract. But also it's for all the marbles. It's undisputed once again. And these guys proved how evenly matched they were in the first fight, which was very difficult to split. I watched the fight twice. The first time I watched it when it was live, I thought Beterbiev had won. The second time I watched it on repeat, I thought Bivol had won. Never by massive margins, but nevertheless, I think it just goes to show how closely contested these guys will always be when they fight. And yeah, bring on a rematch. I'm not entirely sure how this fight would pan out and who I'd pick to win. If you put a gun to my head, I'd probably pick Beterbiev. I think there's just maybe a bit more he could do. Whereas Bivol, I think maybe we saw the best of him, and that probably goes against conventional wisdom because Beterbiev is the older man. But I just think like he could probably impose himself more and probably get more damage done on Bivol. But nevertheless, there's a little while left until this card arrives. I think about 2.5 months, maybe a little bit more, just off the top of my head. But nevertheless, I think there's a lot to look forward to. So yeah, Beterbiev-Bivol headline, brilliant stuff, the highest level of boxing, and likely to be a very competitive fight again. Then it's Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker if we're going by the order that's on the poster. I've already spoken about that one in a separate video. I really like that fight. I think this might be my favourite fight on the card. I do have a little bit of a bias towards heavyweight boxing, but hey, to each his own. Next is Stevenson versus Floyd Schofield. I said before in that video, I mentioned like Shakur Stevenson's probably going to be on it from what I've seen. I don't care. I just don't. Shakur Stevenson versus Floyd Schofield. Yeah, it's for the WBC lightweight title. I don't care. It doesn't do anything for me. If you like that fight, good for you. But me, it doesn't do anything. So Carlos Adames versus Hamza Sheeraz. I have to be honest. I think I've only seen Carlos Adames fight a handful of times, and I think most of those fights were his early fights from like a good few years ago. So I'm definitely going to have to do my homework and watch his fights a bit closely. But on paper, I don't think you can really grumble with this fight because Adames is a world champion. This fight is for his title, the WBC title. And Hamza Sheeraz, I think he's someone who's really surprised a lot of people. Because I remember watching Sheeraz a few years ago and it wasn't all that impressive. If I get his record up, I want to try and pinpoint the fight of his, like maybe his first fight I saw, because I was always aware of who he was because, he was this, up and coming young 6'3" middleweight, and that's kind of strange. I think, what year was it? I want to say it was probably around the time he turned pro, but it's never really paid that much attention. And then I feel like his kind of breakout win was probably against Bradley Skeet, because Bradley Skeet was a known quantity. But yeah, around a few years ago, I just wasn't that impressed by Hamza Sheeraz. But recently, this guy has come on leaps and bounds, and he's turning. I think he's turning out to be a real reliable world level fighter. And Hatman often talks about Sheeraz. There's this like a look in his eyes. There's a certain confidence, there's a steely resolve. And this guy is very steadily becoming quite a seasoned fighter, quite You know, just a real good all-rounder. And I think he's put in some good performances recently. I know the last fight he had against Denny was, you know, it was a bit of a really like, do we need to see this? I didn't make a video on that fight, but I remember watching, because that was on the AJ Dubois undercard. I remember watching that with my mates, and I was like, you know what? He's just going to do Denny in a round. And he almost did. It went two, but yeah, that was a bit of a lamb to the slaughter. Before that, it was Austin Williams. Austin Williams, yeah, not really that great. A bit unproven. Liam Williams, before that, a bit past it. And, you know, a couple of other names that we might recognise. But in Hamza Sheeraz's defence, he's been fighting this kind of lower tier of opposition, but look how he's dealt with them. You know, he's done a bloody good job. You know, he's blitzing some of these guys, and he's looking devastating when he does it. So, yeah, I don't think you can really argue too much. And this is going to be a step up. As I say, I'm going to reserve my judgment for now, just because I want to do, you know, I want to do my due diligence and watch a bit more of Adames before I formulate a prediction. But a good, meaningful fight and a step up for Sheeraz, at least on paper, which, you know, I think that's what we've all been calling for. So, you know, that gets my approval, that fight. Virgil Ortiz versus Israel Madrimov. Before this, Virgil Ortiz was supposed to fight, or there were talks of him fighting Buatsi. I can't lie, I actually prefer this fight, because I think it's just probably going to be a bit more intriguing. You know, yeah, Madrimov, I believe he's actually coming off a loss. I don't think he's fought since the Terence Crawford fight, because that was only in, what, August? And I was impressed by Madrimov in that fight. I'd never really been like over the moon with any of his performances, but yeah, against Crawford, I thought he looked quite good. Virgil Ortiz is someone, I've got to be honest, I've kind of just tuned out of his career, because there were so many cancellations, so many pullouts, so many postponements, that I can't actually remember the last fight of his that I actually looked forward to watching and sat down and watched it. But nevertheless, he is a very solid operator. I don't know who to pick though, that's the thing. So I'll have to come back to this one. I'd say maybe Madrimov, just because he's a bit more consistent, and I was impressed with him in his last fight against Bud Crawford. But Virgil Ortiz, he's done a good job of overwhelming a lot of people. Like he knows how to put the pressure on, and he can, you know, he can be vicious. But I don't know, I think Madrimov might be a bit sturdier, a bit more reliable. But yeah, definitely one I'm going to have to come back to, because, as I say, I've kind of just tuned out of Ortiz Jr.'s career. Then we have the Big Bang Zhang versus Ajit Kabayel. Now, you guys will probably know, if you watch any of my videos, that I really enjoy watching Zhang fight. I think there's just so much to like. If you look at him in the ring, he's a big power punching southpaw, a good boxer, like fantastic counter punches, got power in both hands, not afraid to let his hands go, and personality wise, he has like a certain swagger about him, so it makes him a kind of entertaining character outside the ring. But because he's quite confident and he backs himself, he's not one of these fighters who like tends to pull his punches and hold back. He's had some concerns of his stamina, which I guess that's kind of limited him. But for the most part, when he lets his hands go, which is fairly often, there are just devastating effects if he lands. You know, ask Joseph Parker, ask Deontay Wilder. This guy has got some serious punching power. Ask Joe Joyce as well. That being said, even though I am quite high on Zhang, I don't discount Ajit Kabayel's chances of winning, because, yeah, Kabayel, he's proven himself to be a little bit of a dark horse, because he captured that win over Makhmudov. He beat Sanchez, and I gave him a lot of credit for those. And I was quite happy to see him like finally break out, because he'd just been fighting in obscurity for a long time after beating Derek Chisora in what, it's like November 2017. So that was a long time, and he wasn't doing anything. But now he's got some momentum, captured a couple of good victories. The only thing is, I'm not sure how well those victories have actually aged, because I'm not trying to take away credit from him, but if we look what's happened since, where am I going? I'm just going to get up Kabayel's record. So yeah, he beat Makhmudov. That was on the Day of Reckoning card. Makhmudov, was always unproven. He was a big guy and he could clearly punch hard, but could he really do much else? He was always a little bit crude. He had like quite a stiff robotic construct, but he was always a little bit wild. He'd deviate it because he'd want to engage so much, and he's gone on to lose to Guido Vianello. So yeah, how or is he Italian? So I guess it'd be Vianello. I don't know. Who cares? Um, but yeah, how well has that really aged? Um, because Kabayel's not the only person to stop him now. And then on top of that, the Frank Sanchez fight, which was a really good performance by Kabayel, but Frank Sanchez was clearly injured. He's a fighter who relies on his legs, and you could see he was just a sitting duck there. So something was clearly wrong. And now that's not Ajit Kabayel's fault. In both instances, he dealt with what was in front of him. But I think we do have to factor in this will be a big step up. That being said, though, Zhang, he can be vulnerable. He's someone who has a questionable gas tank, and we've seen Ajit Kabayel in his last two fights put in a concerted effort to attack the body, and he tucks up quite well. He gets into range, and he lets his hands go. He's quite accurate. He's a correct puncher, so even though he might not be the biggest one-punch merchant, he he can sink some shots in, and potentially, I think if he can make it out of the early rounds and invest into the body, he has a decent shot of winning down the stretch. Not to say that he'd stop Zhang, but maybe he can just get Zhang completely gassed and maybe just win the fight on points. So that is a very intriguing fight, and yeah, I look forward to watching that one. And then the bottom of this poster, which I imagine will be the fight that opens the card, is Joshua Buatsi versus Callum Smith. Now, I believe these two were kind of in talks, at least preliminary talks to fight in 2022, 2023. So a little while ago. It never came off. But then I think Joshua Buatsi clearly had some promotional issues, which could explain that. You know what? I really like this fight. I think it's a very interesting fight. And the Callum Smith, before he fought Beterbiev, I would have given him a pretty good chance of beating Joshua Buatsi. I still think he does have a good chance. The only thing is I'm questioning how much does he really want it. That is my the big question mark in my eyes that is hanging over Callum Smith is how badly does he want to carry on? Does he really want to get back to winning ways and title contention? Joshua Buatsi, he's a strange one because he really does blow hot and cold. Some days he looks great, other days he looks poor. And whenever he's stepped up, there really has just been, I want to say, the feeling that he's kind of eking his way past his opponents. And it's just, it doesn't leave a great impression, you know. Joshua Buatsi's a lovely guy. I've met him quite a few times in person. A real gent. But if we're looking at it from a boxing perspective, he's hardly setting the world alight. That being said, stylistically, I think he has the kind of approach that Callum Smith could potentially struggle with. Because we know Callum Smith, even though he's a big guy, he's not that difficult to push back. You know, a 5'7.5" Canelo had Callum Smith dancing on the ropes for 12 rounds. So someone who's big, physical, and tenacious like a Joshua Buatsi, I imagine he can probably do the same thing. The only thing is, Joshua Buatsi is not the most defensive fighter, and Callum Smith, he's someone who can punch, can let off some serious shots even when his back is to the ropes, and so I think that makes it interesting. And Joshua Buatsi's a tough guy, but that, I don't know, man, that Callum Smith left hook, I think, has more than enough mustard on it to do Buatsi some damage. But nevertheless, I'd probably favour Buatsi, but I give Callum Smith a puncher's chance. And I don't know, just keep an eye on Callum Smith. Try and get a gauge for how badly he wants to compete, and it could make the difference. But that is my impression of these fights. I don't want to go on too long, just kind of giving my early impressions of this one. As I say, we are a little bit of a while away, just under 3 months, but plenty to look forward to in the opening months of 2025. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think of this card? Are there any fights on this card that you are looking forward to in particular? And maybe you guys can give me your early predictions. So leave it down there. But for now, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.